morning. Page 445. Chapter 7. Zeks at Liberty. We have had a chapter in this book on arrest. Do we need one now called release? Of those on whom the thunderbolt of arrest at one time or another fell, I shall speak only of 58s. I doubt whether a 5th. I should like to think that an 8th lived to experience this release. And anyway, release is surely something everybody understands, and it has been described so often in world literature, shown in so many films. Unlock my dungeon, out into the sunshine. The crowd goes wild, open-armed relatives. But there is a curse on those released under the joyless sky of the archipelago, and as they move into freedom, the clouds will grow darker. Only in its long-windedness, its leisureliness, its otiose flourishes. What need has the law to hurry now? Does the release differ from the lightning stroke of arrest? In all other respects, release is arrest all over again. The same sort of punishing transition from state to state, shattering your breast, the structure of your life and your ideas, and promising nothing in return. If arrest is like the swift touch of frost on a liquid surface, release is the uncertain half-thaw between two frosts, between two arrests. Because in this country, whenever someone is released, somewhere an arrest must follow. The space between two arrests, that is what release meant throughout the 40 pre-Khrushchev days. Years. A lifebelt is thrown between two islands. Splash your way from camp to camp. Wait between the very first day and the very last. That's what a stretch means. You walk from one camp boundary to the next. That is what is meant by release. Your muddy green passport, which the poet so insistently bade all men envy, it's smirched with Article 39 of the law on passports in black indelible ink. This means that you will not be given a residence permit in a town, even a small one, nor will you ever get a decent job. In the camp, at least you received your rations, but here you do not. Moreover, your freedom of movement is illusory. Not released, but deprived of exile, would be the best description of these unfortunates. Denied the blessings of an exile decreed by fate, they cannot force themselves to go into the Krasnoyarsk taiga or the Kazakh desert, where there are so many of their own kind, so many X's all around. No, they plunge deep into the tormented world of freedom, where everyone recoils from them, and where they are marked men, candidates for a new spell inside. Natalia Ivanovna Stolyarova was discharged from Kharlag on April 27, 1945. She could not go away immediately. She had to obtain a passport. She had no bread card, nowhere to live. The only work offered was splitting logs for firewood. When she had gone through the few rubles collected by friends inside, Stolyarova returned to the camp gates, told the guards some tale about coming to fetch her things. The local customs were patriarchal, and went home to her hut. There never was such happiness. Her friends flocked around, brought her gruel from the kitchen. Oh, how nice it tasted. Laughed and listened to her stories about how lost and homeless she had been outside. No, thanks. We're more comfortable here. Roll call. One too many. The duty officer scolded, but let her stay in camp overnight. May Day Eve, as long as she pushed off in the morning. Stolyarova had worked hard in the camp, never eased up. She had come to the Soviet Union from Paris when she was quite young, had been put inside shortly afterward, and had been longing to be freed so that she could see something of her motherland. As a reward for her good work, she had been discharged on privileged terms. She was not assigned to any specific locality. Those who were sent to a particular place found jobs somehow. The militia could not chase them off elsewhere. But Stolyarova, with her clean certificate of discharge, was like a dog turned out of doors. Wherever she went, the militia refused to register her. Moscow families she knew well would make tea for her, but no one offered her a bed. She spent her nights at the stations. It was bad enough. The militiamen walked around all night to prevent people from sleeping and turned them out before dawn so that the floors could be swept. But that was not all. Any discharged Zek whose path has ever lain through a big station will remember how his heart sank at the approach of a militiaman. How stern he looked. His nose, of course, tells him that you are a former Zek. Any moment now he'll ask for your papers. He will take away your discharge certificate, and that's it. You're a Zek again. For us, rights, laws, even the human being himself are nothing. The document is everything. Any minute now he'll lay his hands on your certificate, and that's that. These are our feelings. Stolyarova wanted to take a job in Luga, knitting gloves. Not for toilers generally, mind you, just for German prisoners of war. Not only would they not take her, but the boss insulted her, with everyone listening, trying to worm her way into our organization. We know their sly tricks. We've read our Shinen. Oh, that fat Shinen. If he had any shame, he'd hang himself. It's a vicious circle. No job without a residence permit. No residence permit unless you have a job. And without a job, you have no bread card either. Former Zeks did not know that rule, and the MVD is required to find them work. And those who did know were afraid to apply in case they were put back inside. You may be free, but your troubles are only beginning. In my student days, there was a strange professor at Rostov University called N.A. Trifonov. His head was pulled into his shoulders, was always pulled into his shoulders. He was always tense and jumpy. He didn't like people calling him into the corridor. We learned later that he had been inside, and if anybody called out his name in the corridor, he thought perhaps the security officers had sent for him. At the Rostov Medical Institute after the war, a doctor discharged from a camp preferred not to wait for the second arrest he thought inevitable, and committed suicide. Anyone who has sampled the camps, who knows them, may very well make this choice. It is no harder. Really unlucky were those who were released too soon. Avenir Borisov's turn came in 1946. He went not to some big town, but to its native settlement. All his old friends, people he had grown up with, tried to avoid him in the street, or to pass by without speaking, and these were yesterday's fearless front-line soldiers. If conversation was quite unavoidable, they made a few carefully non-committal remarks as they edged away. Nobody ever asked him how life treated him all those years, although most of us probably know less about the archipelago than about Central Africa. Will our descendants ever realize how well trained our free citizens were. However, one old friend of his student days did invite him to tea in the evening after dark. Such friendliness, such warmth. There can be no thaw without latent heat. Abner asked to see some old photographs, and his friend got out the albums for him. The friend had forgotten, and was surprised when Abner suddenly rose and left without waiting for the samovar. Imagine Abner's feelings when he saw his own face inked out in all the photographs. Later on, Abner moved up in the world a little and became superintendent of an orphanage. Those growing up under his care were the children of soldiers, and they shed tears of outrage when the children of well-off parents called their superintendent the jailer. There is never anyone around to explain. Their parents ought rather to be called the jailers, and Abner the jailee. In the last century, the Russian people would never have shown such insensitivity in its own language. Although he was under Article 58, Kautel was administratively discharged from the camp in 1943 with pulmonary consumption. He had a black mark on his passport. He could not live in any town, could not get work. He could only die slowly, and everyone shunned him. Then the recruiting commission arrived in a hurry, looking for men to fight. Although he had tuberculosis in an advanced form, Kautel declared himself fit. He would perish among his peers. He served at the front almost till the end of the war. Only in the hospital did the eye of the 3rd Section detect an enemy of the people. Excuse me. In this self-sacrificing soldier. In 1949, he was marked down for arrest as a repeater, but good people in the military registration department came to his help. In the Stalin years, the best way to be released was to go through the gates and stay right there. Such people were already known at work and were given jobs. Even the MVD men, when they met them in the street, looked on them as people who had passed the test. Not always, though. When Prokhorov Pustover was released in 1938, he stayed on the Van Lake as a pre-engineer. Rosenblit, the head of the security section, told him, "You've been released, but remember, you'll be walking a tightrope. One little slip and you're a Zek again. We shouldn't even have to put you on trial, so watch your step and don't start imagining you're a free citizen." Sensible Zeks of this sort who stayed on near the camps, voluntarily choosing prison as a variety of freedom, can still be found in hundreds of thousands out in the backwoods in such places as the Nirab or Naram districts. And if they have to go inside again, it's less trouble. It's just next door. On the Kolyma, there was really not much choice. They hung on to people. The discharged Zek immediately signed a voluntary undertaking to go on working for Dalstroy. Permission to leave for the mainland was even harder to obtain than your discharge. N.V. Sorov-Seba, for instance, was unlucky enough to reach the end of her sentence. Only yesterday, she had worked in the children's settlement, where she was warm and well fed. But now she was turned out to work in the fields, because there was nothing else. Only yesterday, she was assumed of her bed and her rations. She was assured of her bed and her rations. And now she had neither rations nor a roof over her head. She found her way to a ruined house with rotten floors. This on the Kolyma. She was thankful for her friends in the children's settlement. For a long time after her release, they went on slipping her food. The oppressive burden of freedom, that is how she described her new experiences. Only gradually did she get on her feet to become, in the end, a house owner. See her proudly standing outside a shack with some dogs who would not wish which some dogs would not wish to own. A shack which some dogs would not wish to own. case the reader thinks that all this is true only of the unspeakable Colima, let us move over to Vorkuta and look at a typical VGS, temporary civil construction hut of the sorts in which comfortable members of the free population, former Zeks of course, are housed, so that release can easily mean something much worse than it did for MP Yakubovich. A prison just outside Karaganda was fitted out as a home for invalids, the Tikhonov home, and he was released into it under surveillance and without the right to leave. Rudkovsky, when no one would have him, I suffered just as much as I had in the camps, went to the Virgin Islands near Kustanai. You meet all sorts of people there. Ivy fed lost his hearing, assembling trains at Norilsk in the fiercest blizzards. Later he worked as a stoker 12 hours a day, but yet he lacked the necessary certificates. The Social Security officials shrugged their shoulders. Can you produce witnesses? Well, there were walruses. I.S. Karpunich had done 20 years on Kolyma and was worn out and sick. By the age of 60, he still hadn't 25 years of paid employment behind him, so no pension. The longer a man had been in the camps, the sicker he was, the shorter his service record, and the slimmer his chances of a pension. We have, of course, no prisoners' aid society, as they do in England. It is frightening even to think of anything so heretical. People write to me that camp was one day in the life of Ivan Denisovich, and being back outside was another. But wait a minute, surely, since then, the sun of freedom has risen. Surely, hands have reached out to the hapless. It will never happen again. Surely tears have dripped onto the platforms of the party congresses. Zhukov from Kharkov. Though I'm still not on my feet, I more or less kneel now. But we are still labeled convicts, and when staffs are reduced, we're the first to go. P.G. Tikhonov. I'm rehabilitated and work in a research institute, but it still feels like a continuation of the camp. Blockheads, just like our bosses in the camp, still have power over him. G.F. Popov. What everybody says or writes, my colleagues only have to learn. I've been inside, and they start accidentally turning their backs on me. Yes, the devil is strong. Our fatherland is like this. To shove it a yard or two along the road of tyranny, to tyranny. A frown, a little cough is enough. But to drag it an inch along the road to freedom, you must harness 100 oxen and keep after each of them with a cudgel. Watch where you're pulling, watch where you're going. What about the formalities of rehabilitation? Ch, an old woman, receives a brisk summons. Report to the militia at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Nothing more. Her daughter hurries there with the summons that evening. I'm afraid for her. This could kill her. What's it all about? What should I prepare her for? Don't be afraid. It's something that will please her. Her late husband has been rehabilitated, but perhaps the news will be like wormwood to her. That would never occur to her benefactors. If these are the forms which our mercy takes, just imagine what our cruelty is like. What an avalanche of rehabilitations there was, but even this could not crack the stony brow of our infallible society, for the avalanche fell not on the road along which you need only frown, but on that for which you must harness 1,000 oxen. Rehabilitation was just a stunt. Party bosses will tell you frankly, far too many were rehabilitated. Vladimir Zarin Rostov-on-the-Don did 15 years and meekly held his tongue for another 8. Then in 1960, he thought it right to tell his fellow employees how bad things were in the camps. He was put under investigation, and a KGB major told him, "Rehabilitation does not mean that you are innocent, only that your crimes were not all that serious, but there's always a bit left over." In Riga, also in 1960, Petropavlovsky's colleagues to a man joined in making his life a misery for 3 months on end because he had concealed the fact that his father had been shot in 1937. Komagor Zadalovs, who is supposed to be in the right nowadays and who is guilty. Where do I put myself? When some plug ugly suddenly starts talking about equality and fraternity. After his rehabilitation, Markelov became, of all things, chairman of an industrial insurance council, or putting it simply, of the trade union branch in a cooperative enterprise. The chairman of the enterprise would not risk leaving this chosen of the people alone in his office for a single minute, and Bayev, secretary of the party bureau, who was simultaneously in charge of personnel, to be on the safe side, intercepted all mail intended for Markelov. As head of the trade union committee, there's a piece of paper about midterm elections to local committees. Has it come your way? Yes, there was something a month ago. Well, I need it. Here you are then. Read it, but be quick. It's nearly time to go home. Look, it's addressed to me. I'll let you have it back tomorrow. What are you talking about? It's an official document. Put yourself in Markelov's shoes. With a thug like Bayev over you, imagine that your salary and residence permit depend entirely on the said Bayev, and fill your lungs with the air of freedom. Diva, a school teacher, was dismissed for immorality. She had lowered the dignity of her calling by marrying a discharged convict, a pupil of hers in the camp. And this was under Khrushchev, not Stalin. You have nothing concrete to show for yourself for your past except the certificate. A small sheet of paper 12 centimeters by 18, declaring the living rehabilitated and the dead dead. The date of decease. There's no way of checking. Death occurred at a big capital Z means in prison. Cause of death. You can leaf through 100 of them and find the same disease of the day. Sometimes the names of bogus witnesses are added, while the real witnesses all remain silent. We are silent. From whom can future generations learn anything? The door is locked, nailed up, the cracks papered over. Even the young, Grabowski complains, look upon the rehabilitated with suspicion and contempt. Not all of them, though. The majority of young people could not care less whether we have been rehabilitated or not, whether 12 million people are still inside or are inside no longer. They do not see that it affects them, just so long as they themselves are at liberty with their tape recorders and their disheveled girlfriends. A fish does not campaign against fisheries. It only tries to slip through the mesh. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.